Murphy. Welcome to Talkin' the Talk. How are you today?
Hi, I am doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to talk to you because the last time I talked to you was back in 2014 here in Atlanta when you were on the road with Eluveitie.
That's a long time ago.
I know it was. You probably don't remember because I'm sure you do a lot of press, but I was actually on the bus with you. And for some reason, I was supposed to be doing the interview. It was supposed to be around Eluveitie, but at the time, you had just put out the Cellar Darling album. And I was so excited about it that that's all we talked about. So I ended up not being able to publish it because that was all we talked about at the time, you know.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
But one of the things I remember the most was that first off, I was a fan of yours to begin with in Eluveitie because I just thought it was so fascinating that someone played a fucking hurdy-gurdy on stage in a metal band, you know, like you never saw that, you know. But during that interview, one of the things we spoke about was how much you were enjoying Cellar Darling and how much you were enjoying doing things like going to like the little cafes and stuff and playing on you know what I mean? Like the smaller shows and things like that. At that time, did you have an idea at all that Cellar Darling was going to take on a life of its own? Or like, were you at that time considering it, or did you even think that it was going to be what it is now?
No, I had no idea at the time. I've always liked the ring of those two words, Cellar Darling, and I always thought, you know, this could be potentially a good band name, but I would have never thought at the time that this would actually happen, maybe as a side project or something, but Cellar Darling was born very suddenly and very unexpectedly, as you might have witnessed.
Yes, because it's funny because, like I said, when we were talking in 2014, that was all it was. Like it had just really started, you know. And I remember you saying like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna become of it or whatever." And then all this, you know, fast forward to, you know, what was it, 14? It's like 3 years later, and you're putting out, you know, the Spell. And it is such a monstrous record because I felt like with the first Cellar Darling album, you know, as much as I enjoyed it, I felt like you were still trying to kind of figure out, you know, kind of come into your own, you know, being that you had been in a band for so long. But with this album, you really stepped out, and it almost comes across like you're more comfortable in your own skin as being Cellar Darling, if that makes sense. Do you feel that way, or am I kind of just seeing things on my own like that?
No, I think it makes sense. You know, I'm always a person that is searching a bit. I'm never too confident in the current state I'm in. So, you know, from the moment I've been creating music until now, it's been a huge search. I think it's like that with many musicians. We can get lost in our music. That's the great thing about it. But I think with the Spell we did mature our sound. I think you were comparing it to This Is the Sound, right? You weren't comparing it to my solo album.
I was comparing it to This Is the Sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was I wasn't sure for a moment, but yeah, I think basically, we took the elements we loved most in This Is the Sound and decided to take those one step further.
I mean, it really does sound like, because like what I feel like with This Is the Sound, like I said, as much as I loved the album, which I really did, it was like, it was one of those things where I just couldn't, like I couldn't believe that it just sounded so different in a great way, you know what I mean? Like it's like within 3 years time or 2 years time or whatever, you know, that it was like, and I don't know, was it necessarily like the music and the lyrics and whatnot that you were coming up with? Because this one sounds much more like a solid, like almost like a conceptualized kind of thing. Because I mean, obviously, you know, you've got songs that all seem to cover different concepts, you know, like you've got pain, death, love, sleep, insomnia, you know what I mean? And like, so obviously there's some sort of a concept there. Did it is a concept album. So did being a concept album actually tie in that sound to you and kind of reel it in to make it more like, focused or whatever it is?
Well, yeah, what was really special about the process this time is that the lyrical concept was there before the music, and as was the track list, by the way. So we basically wrote the music according to the story, according to the track list. Mm-hmm. And that's something we've never done before. On This Is the Sound, you hear an eclectic collection of stories.
Right.
In which the music was there before the lyrics. So when I would write lyrics, I would listen to the music and I would think, okay, what is the music telling me? The music told us what the stories are. And this time it was the other way around. And it is a story from beginning to end. So that was a really special and very inspiring process. And I think that's also the main reason why the album sounds the way it does. The story just guided us musically.
It really did. And also, to correct myself from earlier, you're right. It was you hadn't come up with the Cellar Darling. We were talking about the concept of it at the time, of what you wanted to do. You hadn't come up with Cellar Darling yet at the time. So I just wanted to correct myself in case I confused you, because I know in 2014 Cellar Darling didn't exist yet. But I remembered you talking about the concept of it.
I have a solo album called Cellar Darling.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, yeah. Good. Okay, good. Yeah, so then I do stay. Okay, okay.
No, you were right. It's just it confuses people because Cellar Darling, the album, is my solo work, and right. Cellar Darling band is the band, and it caused a lot of confusion. But it's basically it's just, I don't know how to explain it.
Actually, it's funny because being a musician myself, you don't have to, because I totally understand. But that's why I was like, when I was looking at my notes, I was like, wait a minute, Cellar Darling, where did I get? And then I remembered that was the name of your album. But
exactly.
But I just thought what I thought about what was so interesting about that interview back then that we did, like I said, in 2014, was that even though with the solo album, like you and I talked about this concept of how you were kind of like, I miss doing like the smaller little things in like small shows and like playing in like cafes and things like that. And you're like, I like to do that in my off time. And I kind of felt like you were kind of brewing towards something that like wanted to get you back to your roots, And then since putting out, the albums as the band Cellar Darling, how are you feeling as far as being a touring musician with this? Because you're no longer just the player anymore. This is like your thing now. So what's the difference to you between that and being a member of Eluveitie?
Well, I actually, in Eluveitie, I very much enjoyed being on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. It might sound weird, but I don't like being in the center. I don't like being in the spotlight. And it's just a bit unfortunate that, the music history, it has just kind of come forth that the singer is the person to be in the spotlight and to be in the center. Mm-hmm. And I'm not badass enough to pull off something like, staying with my back to the audience or because, you can do what you want. It's not like, there's any rules, but there has to be a really good concept if you want to pull off the I'm a shy singer thing, and I just don't have that yet. But I have grown very confident over the past 2 years. I wouldn't say very confident. I would just say more confident than before. And what I'm doing is I'm just, telling people who I am straightforward. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. It's a very intimate show. Sometimes I like to talk, sometimes I don't. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of singer you're getting at the moment. What I'm working on is playing more instruments, which I can kind of hide behind live. That would make me feel more comfortable. So that's still kind of a work in progress thing. But so far, it's worked out really well. I think, this kind of awkward weirdo that I am at times, it actually speaks to people. It doesn't, make the show weird. It just makes it unique.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the American band out of California, a band called Mazzy Star. Their vocalist Hope Sandoval's, they've been around since the '90s, but she was very much like that too. She was very much like a very she didn't like lights on her. She liked to be backlit. She didn't really do a whole lot, but she preferred to let the music and the lyrics dictate how the show was or what the show was about. And I agree with what you said. Like, if you're going to do something like that, or if that's how you choose to perform, your music needs to be upheld to a certain standard. And I think that the concept, I mean, like, I could even just see you performing behind a screen on, with like visuals and whatnot, because the concept and the lyrics are so strong on this album.
Yeah.
So, like, do you miss the extensive touring that Eluveitie used to do?
I guess sometimes I do. But I really enjoy what we're doing as well, especially since we just take a lot of time with things. We took a lot of time in the studio for the spell and really just worked on details and all kinds of stuff. And, the playing live, it's just something that's developing.
Right.
And I love being on tour, but I also love being at home and working on music. Cellar Darling not being my only project. I have tons of other stuff that I'm working on. I have my studio productions that I'm doing. So I'm actually very happy if I'm not on tour the entire year, because it gives me time to focus on some other things as well. So for me, ideal would be a kind of 50-50 balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's one of the things I always noticed about you, which is what I always loved, was that you're always immersed in music in one form or another, whether it's your own or whether you're doing a project for someone else. Like I remember you were even a guest on one of my friend's albums on Holy Grail. Like, you played on. Yeah. Those guys are good friends of mine, and so, like, I love the fact that you're one of those types of musicians who doesn't record, hit the road, come home, and do nothing. Like, you seem to be happy just being immersed in music in general.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that being said, like I said, the new album's about to come out. Like, what are your hopes and expectations for the album as far as reception from the audience, or like just in general?
I don't have any, because, I cannot control what the outcome is or what people will think. Mm-hmm. And that's good. I don't want to control people's minds. That would be a lot of work, if possible.
Be a nightmare.
Yeah. No, so I live in the moment completely. I put a lot of hard work and a lot of emotion into the album, and that happened in the moment, and all I can do now is see what happens. That's what we did with the last album, and it turned out pretty good. And now I'm just really curious. I'm not expecting anything. I'm just very curious to hear and to see how people react.
Yeah, and so the funny thing is that, because, like I said, you definitely created a good strong buzz with the debut Cellar Darling album. With this one, there really seems to be a lot of buzz, especially here in the States. I mean, there's a lot of anticipation from what I've seen. Like, a lot of people are really looking forward to it coming out. Do you think there's a chance that you'll come over to the States to tour behind it, or are you, again, are you just, like you said, kind of happy just sticking to maybe doing some, like, European festivals and not making this a big touring thing?
Oh, there has to be, because we love touring over there. Mm-hmm. We played Prog Power, and then we had some of our own club shows, and it was just amazing. We were received so well, and the audience there is just amazing for us. And I feel that people really understand our music over there. So we are actually working very hard on coming back with the spell as soon as possible. The only question is how, if we're going to do it in the form of supporting another band, if we're going to do a co-headliner thing, or if we're going to do our own shows.
Right.
That's in the works, but we cannot miss out on visiting you guys. So we'll definitely come over there.
Well, that makes me super happy because I'm dying to see this live, especially now. To kind of go back to the live thing now, because of this being a conceptual album, one of the things I did love was that the songs definitely can be listened to out of context and still be enjoyed. Would you play these songs out of context, or is it one of those type of things where you kind of envision playing the album in its entirety in order to get the vision of the album across?
That's actually a good question. We haven't really tried. Well, we haven't played it live so far. The set list we're working on right now is actually a mix. So the spell songs, they are going to be played in a kind of chronological order, but we're not going to play all of them just because we want to play quite a few songs from our debut album as well, because we just feel that being a new band and only having 2 albums, it would be a shame to only focus on the new one, especially because people, they haven't really seen us live yet. Right. And if we play all the songs from the spell, it would just be a long ass show, which I don't pull off at this point. But we'll see. Maybe we're just going to be sad if we don't play the whole one, and then we'll end up doing it anyways. But yeah. I
don't know. Like I even picture it kind of like maybe even being kind of an event kind of thing. Like I could see you doing like a one, like, I don't know, maybe for like a DVD or something where you would do the whole album and it's full and have like, I don't know. I always like to think outside of the box when it comes to live performances. Like I said, again, the Spell to me was such a visual record. I mean, I've listened to the album 5 times since I got it 2 days ago. Wow. Yes, I'm not kidding you. I've listened to it 5 times because I love it. I just couldn't stop, because I heard something different every time I listened to it. And so I get a lot of these visuals. So all I could picture was like maybe they could do a show where there'd be like a screen and, it would have all the visuals that went along with each song. And then it kind of told the story as it went along and this, that, and the other. So you can totally steal that idea if you decide to use it.
Oh, we've had these ideas too. I mean, we've been talking about everything. It included visuals. It even included dancers at some point. It got kind of out of hand at one point. But yeah, we're absolutely going to try and incorporate a visual part of the show. It's all a matter of, financing it. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, this is where it gets boring and realistic, but maybe it's interesting for people to hear that we're a band that is just starting out and we just don't have the financial possibilities to do all this awesome stuff that big bands do.
But it is fun to dream big, though, especially when when you have an album that actually has the listener thinking like that. I would say that that's a very successful thing musically and artistically that you've done. Yeah. So I mean, with the album, the recording process, you work a lot in the studio. Obviously, you worked very hard on the album and everything. Is it hard to separate yourself from the role of being, usually being a studio person and then being a musician playing on the album? Because I know that you have to separate the two when you're doing one of the other. Is that a hard role for you to split sometimes, or?
Actually, I'm doing pretty fine, but that is only due to working with another producer. Because I'm not fully producing the album myself. I'm doing it with Tommy Fetterly, right, who also produced our last album, and he does most of the technical work. I recorded some of the stuff, but not all of it, and he does the mix, and I just kind of chime in and chime in to be a bitch about certain stuff, and then he changes it. But I mean, this time he had a huge influence on us also while songwriting. With some of the songs, we just had sketches, and he would actually also work with us as a real producer. How you know it from all the movies, like telling us what to play and trying out stuff, and that was really awesome. And I need that because, like you said, it's really hard to be split, and I think you need, or at least I need, a person to tell me and to guide me at times and tell me which ideas are good and which ones are bad and which ones can be changed. Yeah, stuff like that.
Yes, because I know as an artist, it's very hard sometimes to relinquish that control where you know, like when I was a solo artist and I was doing music on my own and I was doing my own home recordings and I had total control over everything. The very first time I ever went into the studio with my band, I just remember thinking like, this is really hard. Like I want to be back there, you know, but then all of a sudden I was like, oh wait, I actually just get to be a musician and let him deal with it. But then say like, hey, can you actually make that a little different? You know, like you said, chime in and kind of, you know, bitch about things, you know, instead of doing it all yourself.
Yeah, I think, I can also imagine doing everything by myself. It's not that it's impossible, but, we work so well together and include other people. Also, we had the pianist Freddie Schneider, who was also on our last album. He also gave a lot of input and wrote parts. And I just think it's important to it makes you hear things differently. And we're just the kind of band that functions really well at cooperating, because we're also a band that writes together. It's not like we have a mastermind who tells everybody what to do. So I think it's really important to always be in contact and exchange ideas, because I think that's kind of what makes you develop as a musician as well.
Yeah, because it also takes a lot of the stress off of you artistically to feel like you have to be the one to come up with everything. Like it's nice to have people that you're working closely with, that you trust with, to collaborate, so that it is more of a unified effort as opposed to, here, I wrote this, you play this, you play this, you know.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about too was that the hurdy-gurdy. I know that's not a very traditional instrument, and you've been asked about this a lot, I'm sure. But for some of my listeners who don't know, like that was what you were known for playing in Eluveitie. With Cellar Darling, you're actually playing some other instruments as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how it feels to expand instead of being tied to just one instrument?
It feels really great, actually. I love the hurdy-gurdy, but at some point, I always get bored with stuff. And I'm a person who likes to do a lot of things, and I don't do all of them that well, but I like to half-ass my way through 10 things instead of doing one thing perfectly.
I love that. That's what I always tell people. I always tell people, I'd rather play 3 instruments mediocre than to play one really well.
Yeah. I absolutely also admire the other thing, being, a virtuoso at something.
Right.
But it's just it doesn't fit to my personality. I couldn't do it. And so, I'm playing the flute on the album, which I kind of rediscovered for myself. I used to play it as a child, and then I quit. And it's a beautiful instrument. It just makes me feel nice when I play it. And it fits too. I think it fits the atmosphere.
I totally agree. Yeah, it totally fits the sound. And I guess, because I know we're running out of time and you have a lot of interviews, but I could talk to you all day, I feel like. Was that the overall sound, especially on this album, it's obviously going to be very different from Eluveitie because the creative nucleus is completely different. This album in general seems much more melodic, much more kind of not subdued in a negative way, but subdued in the sense that there's room for the songs to breathe. There's melody, there's rhythm, there's things like that. Is that something that you craved while you were in Eluveitie sometimes, like that kind of drew you to the vision of Cellar Darling?
Not really. I wasn't craving, Eluveitie to be different. Eluveitie was exactly like it should be. Mm-hmm. And I was really enjoying myself, but I always needed other outlets. I always needed to have side projects. And I was really happy with that constellation. I had the main band that is very successful, but then I would have my weird side projects where I could just do what I wanted. And actually it was perfect like that. So I wasn't missing anything, but I am just a completely different songwriter than Kriegel. And that's perfectly fine. And I think that's what people are hearing now, that, when Ivo writes songs, when I write songs, when we write songs together with the whole band, they're just going to sound completely different because we're different people. I think we focus more on, if we have a good riff or a good melody or whatever, we really focus on that and we only add things that are necessary. I'm not the type of person to write tons and tons of stuff, tons of layers.
Right.
Just because I'm not that type of musician, but I think the other thing is great too. It's just, a matter of personality, I guess, and taste.
Yeah. And I really feel like the folk element is a lot stronger in Cellar Darling, especially with the new album, from a lyrical and a vocal standpoint, because again, like being able to hear every word you're saying and be able, to understand the lyric and for it to kind of follow the melody of the song, really, for a concept album, that to me, that's a very important thing. And I felt like that was achieved very well.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. And so was it hard? Was it not hard, but to become the main lead singer, like you said, like when you go echoing back to your first solo album, was that kind of what sparked it for you, that you were like, you know what, I think I could do this on my own?
Honestly, I didn't really think about that at all. I've always loved singing because I just feel that I can express what I want to tell people, or the stories that I create. I can just express it the best with the voice. For me, the voice is just another one of my instruments that I play. And I've always loved singing. I don't know if I love being a singer as much as I love singing. But I just do stuff without thinking too much. I just dive in and see what happens. And either I fail and I learn and I grow, or, I do it okay and then it's fine. Nothing happens then. Yeah.
Well, whatever you've done it great. I think you've pulled it off extremely well. And I think The Spell is such a huge growth for you from your very first solo album to where it is now, to the point to where I'm already looking forward to seeing what lies ahead for us from you. And I can't thank you enough for making such an incredible record that has been such an awesome listen.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Well, cool. So The Spell comes out in 2019 on Nuclear Blast. And before we close out, is there anything you'd like to add to like the fans that are listening or anything like that?
Well, just thank you very much for the support. And I really hope to see all of you at a gig someday. That would be fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what, you make it to Atlanta, I'll bring a bottle of wine. We'll chat. We'll have a good time. It'll be fun.
That's going to be great.
Or whatever else you like to drink. I don't know what you like to drink.
Red wine. I'm a red wine person.
Oh, see, I'm usually a white wine guy, but you know what? For you, I'll bring the red. It'll be good.
White is okay too.
I love it. Well, Anna, thank you so much again, and I know you have a busy day, so congratulations on a great album, and best of luck with everything. And I hope we'll get to see you on the road.
I hope so too.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, and good luck with all the press.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, Anna. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.